So, we've talked about the mythologies of Saturn in detail and how that relates to time and our concept of time and space. And we've also discussed the affinity of Saturn with the Earth element. What I'm going to do now is also talk about the affinity of Saturn with the air element. And after this, we will talk about fire and water. And that will wrap up this section of the introduction to Saturn, the Saturn archetype, from the point of view of the elements. So Saturn, if you are not aware, actually from all the planets that we use in astrology, from the visible planets all the way out to the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, Saturn is the only one that has a density which is lower than that of water. It is the only one that has a density lower than water. It is the lightest planet out there, actually. So, you may think that this is a bit strange because you just talked about Saturn as in terms of the heaviness and the slowness. So in our mind, what we have to do when we're thinking about this archetype is separate what these different aspects of Saturn mean, because each of these aspects of the Saturn archetype has a particular function when it comes to interpretation, and that's what we have been discussing. So Saturn being the lightest planet, it's even lighter than Jupiter, actually. Saturn being the least dense planet of all the planets, with the density being of 1 set to that of water. So Saturn is the only one that has a density that is lower than water, which means that Saturn is an archetype that could float on water. It rises above water. So the air aspect of Saturn has this objectivity to it that is meant to uplift one out of the emotionality of being and the drudgery of the emotions. So people will talk about a psychic ability or intuition as a sort of water element type of process or way of receiving information, or intuiting information is probably the better way to say that. Saturn, however, is not concerned with receiving messages or transmitting messages. It is about removing oneself from something. It is about distinguishing oneself from something. And this is very important as an aspect of the Saturn energy, because curiously, in Vedic astrology, Saturn is associated with the air element only. It in fact controls the air element. And the air element, let's talk about that in terms of what we've discussed just before. We've talked about the Earth. How does the Earth relate to air? What do they have in common? What is their relationship? Well, one of the more deeper aspects of this Earth and air relationship is to do with how things grow. So if you are a farmer, or if you know someone who works in agriculture, which is one of the things signified by Saturn, by the way, if you know someone who works in agriculture, it's a hard life, schedules, not just our own cycles, but we have to be very much aware of the cycles of the earth and of nature in order to farm successfully. Well, at least that's how it used to be traditionally. And in many places where subsistence farming is predominating over commercial farming, it is very much the same way. You have many places in India, for example, where farmers still use very traditional methods in tilling the land and earning a means of living and also means of nutrition that way. They just know that, okay, it's that time of the year and this is what I need to do in order to get a certain result in a couple of months' time. So there is that awareness of nature that comes with that sort of Saturnine focus in the present moment and observing what is happening around us, all right, as opposed to being totally immersed in ourselves, which is a solar sort of quest, okay? But if you think of a plant that is growing, particularly a crop plant, a farmer knows that it needs to be exposed to the elements in order to grow. Each element is going to provide some stimulus for the plant to grow. Curiously, so sunlight being the fire, the radiance, obviously that is going to help the plant to grow. The nourishment and quality of the soil, that is going to help it to grow. Water, of course, is essential for life. Now, air, yes, transpiration and all those things, but it goes a bit deeper than that, quite literally, because it is only by exposure to very strong wind, turbulence. This is the external stimulus that propels a plant to dig deeper roots. And I think when you think about Saturn in association with an air element, you are thinking about this particular aspect of the air element, its ability to bash you up. It's almost like the turbulence that you would experience in a tornado that forces you to want to dig your heels or root yourself in some way, dig into the ground. You've seen people walking around in gale force winds and their natural instinct is to get closer to the ground or lay down. Saturn does that to people. It forces you to bend and to be flexible, or to learn to be flexible amidst this sort of turbulence effect. So Saturn, from an air element point of view, is those things in life and those aspects of ourselves that we encounter in life that bring a lot of turbulence into our experience of life, that bash our sense of boundaries. We experience a lot of energy this way. But the point of it all is to stimulate you to dig deeper with your life, to dig deeper into your own resources, into your own earth element, whatever that is for you as a person. That is the strength of Saturn, and I think that then becomes the beginning point of associating Saturn with the earth element. So I think this is a very important distinction to be made when we're talking about Saturn in terms of all these elements. Of course, air is an element that is necessary for life. So that connects to the natural signification of the houses that we talked about previously with Saturn. And just like the other masculine sign, which is fire, they're necessary for life in the sense that to initiate life, we need the spark of life and we need the breath of life. Okay? The feminine elements, water and earth, they are there to receive and provide a container and a proper foundation and nourishment and flow for further growth. But so the mutual relationship between the masculine and feminine, even from an elemental point of view, is very much there, and I think that's how life should be. Each person has a certain amount of masculine and feminine energies and it's about accepting both of these and what their role is in our life. That provides for the best sort of growth and experience of life. So Saturn having that control over the turbulent nature of the air element. So if you think about a tornado or a very strong wind, okay, constantly butting you in the face, if you've ever experienced sitting or standing in front of a fan that is very strongly pushing forth air into your face, it's difficult to breathe actually. Okay, you have to remove yourself from that high pressure environment in order to breathe again. So Saturn, from that point of view, creates the turbulence in our life that creates a sense of, I'm now in a high pressure environment and I need to stabilize myself. I need to take a moment's rest. I need to root myself in order to face this challenge. Okay, so like a tornado, it's a lot of air and turbulence, so it's very destructive. It can be destructive, but at the same time, the air that is in a tornado is just revolving around itself. So if you think about the air sign that Saturn rules, which is Aquarius, the tendency can be destructive. It can be separatist in view of the world and things, in how we distinguish ourselves from others. Just like Leo can, the Leonine solar urge to distinguish itself from others is the same as what Aquarius has, but Aquarius does it in a different way. Okay, Aquarius chooses to disconnect instead of to proclaim itself. And so the polarity between Aquarius and Leo is kind of shared in that sense, that they both are having a similar urge and they're responding to it in very different ways. The other thing about the air element is that we don't see it. I think air is that one element that we really can be very unconscious about. Just like a fish that is in water may not know or be aware of the water, even though the water is necessary for life, for the fish. So likewise, the air element for human beings at least, we can be sort of unaware that this is actually going on. The breathing process itself, which is necessary for life, is an involuntary process. Okay, if you're sleeping, if you're in deep sleep, if you're waking even, you're not really aware of how you're breathing and how this process of living is actually happening. And it's just a physical thing. It's a physical process, let alone something psychological of a process, or let alone something emotional or vital or psychic or, energetic in that sense. If we're not even aware of something so simple physically happening to us. I think this is a Saturn lesson as well, that something so obvious to our life process, we cannot be aware of it. And so the Saturn energy creates a sort of turbulence so that we can become aware of it. Just like we may not be aware of the air around us unless there is movement of the air, unless there is a breeze or a wind or a tornado, okay? Then we pay attention to what is actually happening. So likewise, in a similar fashion, the Saturn energy takes all those things in our life that we are not aware of, that we should be aware of, that are necessary actually for our life, and sort of brings it to your attention in a forceful and uncomfortable way. So the one last thing I want to mention about the element is that, as we said in the beginning, it's the lightest planet. Saturn is the lightest, or the least dense planet. And so it doesn't really have an affinity for water, which we'll talk about when we talk about Saturn's relationship to the moon, physically but also esoterically. The air element is what is necessary in life for us to distinguish ourselves from others. I mean this in the sense that we create labels. I am a doctor. I am a man. I am an engineer. I am a South African. I am whatever. A father, a son, a husband, a brother, a friend, an enemy, politician, businessman, whatever. Okay. These labels distinguish us from others for the function and sake of us having a separate identity in the world. So again, we come to the Aquarius Leo axis, where we need the Aquarius distinguishing happening, the separating ourselves from others happening, in order so that Leo can have room to do its Leo thing. Okay, they are both necessary and supportive of each other. And we mentioned a little bit about this when we talked about Saturn's relationship to the Sun. Now, but actually, what is happening, I think in the world today, where people are living so much online, people are plugged in to life artificially, we create even more distinctions to the point that the things that make us distinct from one another are becoming reasons for us being divided from one another. And this is a dangerous Aquarius sort of archetype that is happening everywhere in the world. Online media, social media platforms, it's like an artificial existence for some people. People that have grown up without or before Facebook, they have a totally different experience of life. We have children that are growing up nowadays that are plugged in from a very young age, even before the first Saturn square at 7 years old. They are plugged in already and using iPads and exposed to the global environment and the community at large, which is also an Aquarius thing. And what does that do to the Leonine energy? Does it give it appropriate space, healthy space to grow and function with labels for the sake of having an ego? Or is it forcing people, is it actually restricting the solar energy's ability to actually establish itself? Where now people feel the ego is being battered and poked at from every angle possible. So that people and children growing up don't have the time and necessary development time to let their egos establish naturally. Their egos are being established almost maybe dysfunctionally. So what we are having happening is that the Leo energy or solar energy of life is not forming functionally and properly. It is actually being informed a lot more by an Aquarius type of energy, a Saturnine type of energy, from the outside inside, instead of from inside outside. And so you have millennials and all these, safe places in schools being required, and safe places here, there, and everywhere. Okay, people are just very sensitive that way because the solar energy is not strong enough to face the Saturn turbulence that they're being exposed to. So what we have happening is then, for the sake of security and safety, ego safety, people disconnect. I block people on Facebook. I untag you as a friend. That's the the usual place where it happens, on social media, in that artificial Aquarius world. But then increasingly more and more, my friends, I disconnect from them because they don't respect me, or they don't see me for who I am. And anybody and everything that is being poked at, for the sake of securing it, I disconnect it from life. If we carry on disconnecting this way because of Aquarius turbulence, what we are left with is loneliness and depression. Not only do we not have connection with life now, but we also have not developed the solar Leo connection to ourselves. So what do people have but emptiness, inside and outside? And this is just increasing in society. We need to get back to a healthy relationship with the Saturn energy in order to have a healthy solar development of personality, of willpower, and of energy to pursue life in the way that speaks to our heart. So this is very important. So it's all these assumptions about everybody else and how I'm not like this person, I don't like that person, I don't want to do this anymore, that's not right for me. We do the mental air thing of furthering the turbulence and in allowing it to impact how we are experiencing life. So I block this person, I disconnect, and we are left in a very lonely journey through life. So, and what is creating all of this is our assumptions based upon fear of losing, fear of being hurt, fear of that security, whatever little security of personality that we have, being hurt or poked down or burnt down or ridiculed, whether this is in an online forum or whether this is in real life, a conversation with someone, or at the workplace or in the family home. So it's these assumptions that are creating these assumptions about what we need to be doing, the assumptions of what security is. What is security really? Okay, the only security we have is this one, the self. So back to these assumptions, and this is how Aquarius is a fixed air sign, but it's also very turbulent, and I just wanted to point that out. And there's these two things that are happening with the sign. So actually the way out of this and the higher significance of this aspect of Saturn in support of the solar journey actually is that through the air element itself, once more, we can separate ourselves from everybody else on this planet in so many ways, except one. We are all breathing the same air. The breathing process is a shared process. It's not happening in your body alone. What you are taking into your body, who knows where it has come from? Some plants out there, some animals, some bacteria, some other people, the person you don't like that you think is not like you, the person that you blocked on Facebook. Who knows? The air that you are breathing in for your life. You don't really have a say. You can't really control where that air comes from, can you? In a larger context. So breathing actually, in fact, is a collective activity. The whole planet is actually breathing together. This is something we know here in our head, but as a form of meditation practice, to settle into your own breathing, to become aware through the element of air, to connect or reconnect or retrace your steps back through being, to understand how you are actually being, to understand your life. And then connect to the sun. All of a sudden you have energy. All of a sudden life is new and life is fresh. Every breath, it can be joyous. Pranayama or breath control in yoga is not just about breath control. It is a Saturn process in order to activate the solar energies in our life. And this is a simple way of explaining that. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say for now about the air element and its relationship to Saturn and the role of Saturn in that. And next we will talk about Saturn's relationship to the moon and how that can be brought into interpretation with a lot of interesting consequences. See you next time.